Good evening. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here. Appreciate everyone being here. Little piece of business before we get started. Wi-Fi SSID there for you. Hilton Honor Meeting, no password. So you'll want to sign into that pretty quick here. So welcome, first ever OFA think tank. It's a big experiment. We're going to see how this works. Try something different this year. See how far we get with it. So go along with it, see what happens. What's a think tank? I don't know. We should ask Joe Balick. He made the name up. He's the nearest marketing guy. It's a group of people that we all get together and see if we can solve some problems working collaboratively. We may not be experts in the particular area of the think tank, but hopefully the think tanks are facilitated by people who are at least familiar with the areas that we're addressing. The idea being that we get together people, everyone here knows something about networks, right? That's why you're here. So you must know something about networks. That says something about your skill level right away, and we take advantage of that. Even if you're not expert in a particular area, you've got something to add to this notion of a think tank. So it's a group of people convened to explore an assigned topic in some leading edge technology or idea. Facilitated by knowledgeable moderators or facilitators, but it exploits the skills and insights of the audience in the room. If I could have all of the facilitators stand up for just a second, please. That would be great. Jesse Martinez, Susan Coulter, Doug Voigt, Doug Ledford, myself. There's one or two more missing. That's okay. We'll flush them out of the woodwork. It's highly interactive. It's expected to be highly interactive. In fact, this is the only room that has a projector in it. The other two think tanks will not. To the extent that we're taking notes or wanting to convey information, we're going to go old school. You'll find flip charts and markers in the other two rooms. The idea being that when there's a screen with slides on it, people tend to stand and look at the slide. What we really want is people to be engaging in an interactive kind of fashion. What isn't it? It's not a BOF on steroids. The reason I say that is because with a BOF, you go to a BOF because you are wearing that particular color of feather. This is not supposed to be like that. So by all means, feel free to participate in a BOF, or a think tank that is outside of your comfort zone. It's not a tutorial or a lecture. So if the facilitator starts flipping up slides and taking you through a detailed explanation, cut them off at the knees. You have my permission to do so. What are the objectives? What are we trying to accomplish here? We want to explore and illuminate some leading edge issue, challenge, or technology, which we've colorfully called a grand challenge. The idea is to describe a path forward that will let us address whatever that grand challenge happens to be. So mostly we're looking for, how are we going to move this problem forward? I'm not necessarily looking for solutions. This is not an exercise in solving cold fusion over the course of the next couple of hours or the next week. It's an exercise in figuring out how you would solve cold fusion if that's what you choose to take up. It's supposed to bring the workshop's theme, collaboration, to life. We've heard repeatedly over the years that this workshop, is unique in a number of ways, that it's a place where people who are focused on networks and high-performance networking can get together and collaborate in kind of an open way. But we've always heard continuously, constantly, we'd like more opportunities to do that, more opportunities for networking, more opportunities to collaboration. Well, here it is. Here's one of them. You'll see this showing up throughout the workshop this year. There's a number of events that are all focused on increasing opportunities for networking, both formally and informally. This is one of them. Non-objective, solve the problem on the spot. If you are able to solve the grand challenge in the next couple of hours, we obviously didn't give you a big enough challenge. So we're not looking for an answer. You're not supposed to come out and say, the answer was Z equals 18. That's not the point here at all. The point is to brainstorm on it, get some insight into it, bring the rest of the group along with you. Grand challenge, what's that? Some key emerging issue that's facing us as a networking community. And when I say a networking community, I'm talking here about more than just the people in this room. The networking community includes everyone whose job has anything to do with a fabric or a network. That includes people who write code or applications, people who deploy it, people who write code for the network, people who administer networks. It's the broadest sense of the community you can imagine. They're supposed to be specific, the grand challenges are. No blue sky problems, so these are supposed to be things that are actually in front of us or will be very, very soon. Nothing, kind of over the moon sort of stuff. They are problems that benefit from a consensus among a relatively large community. Sometimes to get some new project or problem off the ground requires a consensus among a group of people. That's what we're looking for here. And the challenges were chosen to be actionable. There has to be some sort of a path forward, otherwise you're really wasting your time. We may not have a solution today, as I've said a couple of times. All right, so that's what a grand challenge is. What's the method that we're going to use to do this? For this year, since this is an experiment, something we're trying this year for the first time, the Technical Program Committee, I chair that committee. Parks, where are you? Parks co-chairs it with me this year. We chose to take up the process of putting together this think tank as a TPC effort this year. We'll see how it goes. If this is wildly successful, maybe we'll organize it a little bit differently next year. But the TPC selected the grand challenges and identified the appropriate facilitators for each. And then as part of that, each think tank is given the topic, whatever its grand challenge is, a specific assignment related to that topic. In other words, it needs to be something that you can come out of it at the end and say, we delivered something that made sense. And there's a request on the table to deliver a result on Friday. So the clock is running. You've got the next 4.5 days to come up with the answer. All right, what's the process? This is more like a timeline than anything else. There's where we are right now, Monday evening. Introduce the think tank topic, that's me. Introduce the facilitators, which I'll do in just a minute. Describe the 3 think tanks, which I'll do in just a minute. Then I'm going to ask each of you to select one to participate in. And we're going to go off into our corners and start working. The think tanks then break out into individual meetings, one here, one in the room next door, and one in Foothills across the hallway. Sometime during the week, I hope that you will find a way to meet informally. That could be either face-to-face, or it could be electronically, whatever works for you. If these things get really exciting, I can imagine that people start, finding each other and having, quick conversations. I had this great thought over breaks or over lunch. Maybe you get together and go to dinner. We'll see how it goes. There was a thought for a while of allocating workshop time to working on the think tanks during the week, but it felt like we were beginning to allocate a lot of workshop time to this project here, so we chose to keep this very informal. On Wednesday, there's an event called Meet the Experts, another one of these networking events. By the way, right after Meet the Experts, Meet the Experts is 3:30 to 4:30. Immediately after that is the networking social hour, so we can sort of just roll in from Meet the Experts to the social hour. But there will be a table devoted to each of the think tanks at the Meet the Experts session, where I hope you'll choose to huddle together and work on whatever you think are your final conclusions. And then Friday, you're being asked to deliver the findings and recommendations, and we'll publish the results on the OFA webpage. Just to allay any fears or concerns you have, this Friday thing, we have an hour allocated for that. There's 3 think tanks. That means it's 20 minutes. You can't do very much damage in 20 minutes. Okay, so here they are, the 3 think tanks we're doing this year. By the way, we had a proposal for a 4th. We couldn't fit it in, which I'm tremendously regretful of, because it was a really great topic. It was on artificial intelligence. We were in the happy position of choosing 3 of the best 4 topics, and there were 4 really great topics. It was not an easy choice. First one is Linux containers. Facilitator for that will be Doug Ledford and Jason Gunthorpe. Is Jason here? Okay, Doug, stand up again if you would. The challenge is containers for RDMA are just being implemented. How must they be implemented in order to be of use to you? Do you want to say any more, Doug, or is that good enough for right now? That's good enough for now. Okay. Think tank number 2, persistent memory over fabrics. Doug, where are you? Doug and I will be leading this one. That will be, I forget which room, we'll see in just a minute. The challenge, some people think that persistent memory over fabrics is the next big deal, but is it really? If it is, what is needed to get it off the ground and to drive adoption? A pretty meaty topic there. By the way, I've started to use the expression remote persistent memory instead of persistent memory over fabric. So if you see me doing this, yell at me. And then think tank number 3, Jesse, Susan, stand up, please. They'll be facilitating this one. Highly skilled system administrators in their own right, by the way. Challenge, how to deal with the reality of diverse fabrics in modern systems. So there's pretty meaty topics here. I'm not going to go through the abstracts for each of them. And I also am not going to go through, on the abstract page was a discussion of the assignment that was given to each of the think tanks. You can sort of guess where that is. But one of the things I suggest that each think tank do is brainstorm on what you think the assignment ought to be. We've given you one to start with. That doesn't mean you need to slavishly stick with it. So a few suggestions to get started. There's a list of mailing lists on the next slide. I'll flip that up in just a second and you can see it. Please subscribe to these. This is a way that you can stay in touch during this week. So if you want to communicate with each other, if you want to set up an opportunity to get together and brainstorm further on your topic, or you just want to send each other love notes, that's fine too. So there's a mailing list, one for each of the 3 think tanks. With any luck, we'll keep these mailing lists going over time, but we'll see. Next, I suggest that each think tank appoint itself a scribe to take notes. If this is done well on a PowerPoint slide, those notes will actually wind up being your report out for Friday. So it really is what comes out of the brainstorming is probably the best way to think about how the results get conveyed. Begin by brainstorming on the assignment, modifying it as the group sees fit. We in the technical program committee did our best to think what we thought would be a reasonable assignment, but it's a group of people collaborating to do something interesting. It could go in all kinds of directions, so feel free to take it in some other direction if it seems appropriate to the group you're working with. Figure out when, where, how to reconvene during the week. Some suggestions: evenings, during lunch, during the Meet the Experts, electronically, and of course Friday. Brainstorming rules are in effect here. There are no bad ideas. No one should be made to feel bad for saying something really dumb. Pat them on the back and say that was really dumb, but then move on. But brainstorming rules are in effect here. All right, a few logistics. Think tank number 1, Linux containers will be in the mall, which is the room right next door to this. For those who don't know, the mall is a reference to the Pearl Street Mall, which is the downtown area in Boulder. And the room right next to that, by the way, while I'm on a roll here, it's called West End and East End. Those are the 2 ends of the Pearl Street Mall, for those who didn't know. And here you can see the mailing list, the URL for subscribing to the mailing list for the Linux containers think tank. Second one, persistent memory over fabrics, will be in Foothills, the room just around the corner, across the hall and around the corner. And again, there is its URL right there for signing up for that mailing list. The third one, system administration and interoperability of diverse fabrics, will be held in this room right here. And once again, there's the URL for subscribing to the mailing list. Questions, comments, concerns, thoughts? Jason's here just in time. What do you think? Are we up to the challenge?
Well, I'd like you to point out the theme, which is collaboration.
The theme of the workshop is the workshop is about collaboration this year, absolutely, and this is one of the opportunities to do that. All right, I didn't want this to take a lot of time, and it didn't, because I really want most of the time to be spent working on the think tanks themselves. So we have from now until 9 o'clock. So at this point, it's a self-select deal. Choose your poison. Go forth and think.